Eric, you're solo. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Welcome to this podcast. It is a podcast. They actually decided, 3 was good, so they're quitting. It's mine now.
No, he's by himself.
I have decided that it is mine now.
This is the Creative Krunch Podcast.
Yesterday's left turn might be tomorrow's right turn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wait. That's a good idea.
I want to see if we can all hum simultaneously at the same pitch. I don't know how it'll work because I think the audio gets cut. But I can't hear you guys, so I guess I'll find out later if we were all in sync.
I heard both of you.
I think you might have just heard me, or I don't know.
I think I heard
myself.
Eric too.
And Ben.
I just heard myself.
Nailed it.
I think we got it. I think it was pretty solid.
A-team.
Okay, so all right, so I guess we'll start with a little introduction. All right, so today on the Creative Krunch Podcast, we have Eric Osborn. He is an out of this world wedding photographer. He's based in Cedar Rapids. He's a goofy, genuine, owns 3 pairs of burgundy pants. He's photographed over 90 weddings, and let's all stand up and give Eric a round of applause.
We're standing. Oh no, okay.
We should get one of those those sound buttons that you can click and applause
Just
or
like a
cheering or
huge
something.
auditorium. By the way, everybody,
Yeah.
This is a live recording. We have thousands of audiences. They're just in another room. You can't see them.
They're 6 feet apart. They got masks on and all that stuff. But yeah, thousands.
That's who's behind those doors.
They're all at Eric's house.
Yes.
Yeah, but seriously, welcome, Eric. This is pretty exciting. I mean, this is only our 4th episode, but you are our first guest, and what a way to introduce, bringing guests on the podcast. We're super pumped that you're here, and we're super excited to kind of dive into what makks you Eric.
Yeah, so I guess
My name helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's start with having you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, maybe how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, so my name is Eric Osborn. I am a full-time wedding photographer. I also do a lot of couple sessions, trying to get a little bit more into doing elopements as well, added in there. I've been, with it being my own business, it's been since the start of 2018, so 2021 will be the 4th year. My fiance Ashley is my second shooter all the time for that. But she's very kind to give me her weekends and a lot of her weekdays to help me with stuff. Since she's a lot of the marketing and content writing behind a lot of what I do, but basically take my goofy words and feelings and thoughts and make it into coherent messages for our couples. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I totally get that with the whole marketing side of it. That's an entire job in itself.
Right. I think that's an interesting thing about with you guys for sure that there's no real way to prep for it. But when you go in to start doing stuff full time, you're like, oh, okay. So I correspond with all the couples. I do all the shooting. I do all the editing. Oh, I also do all of the marketing. Oh, I also do all of the actual networking with vendors. It's just like every time you think you have it figured out, there's another curveball and another job added on. And so by the time you're even just into your first year, you're like on 10 plus jobs, and trying to balance that with life and that kind of stuff too. But also give the best experience for your people, just because you really want it to matter a lot to them, because it matters a lot to you, with that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, I mean, you nailed that right on the head. As being a small business owner, entrepreneur, whatever, you wear a whole lot of different hats. And especially for me right now, trying to figure out taxes and stuff, trying to be an accountant. No, thank you. I do not.
CPAs are your best friend ever. I would definitely always recommend a CPA, and they're not like crazy expensive with stuff, and they can always help you with like loophole things and make sure you're doing things the right way too. Because I think that was a big thing when I started out on my own. I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty overwhelming. Definitely worth a CPA. Just be like, make sure, just please help me. I don't want to get audited.
Yeah.
Just please.
I just don't want to go to jail.
Yeah, please.
I mean, we could talk forever on taxes and boring stuff. No offense to accountants out there, but
I do have a question. So you said you've been doing it for 4 years? Is that?
So I'm on my own, but I worked with a wedding company for 2 years before that. So technically it'll be like my 6th year doing it full time, but in terms of like actually running my own business, like when I left that wedding company, I realized that I was doing like 90% of the work already. But I wasn't getting the fulfillment of being able to do the unlimited hours with couples and like actually like have like a really good, like lasting, like less of a client thing and more of giving them like an actual, like a friendship kind of thing. And that's like what a lot of what we strive for. And I know through a lot of like conversations with you guys, like that's what you like try to do as well. And I think that's a lot of like great stuff with the job itself, is that with running your own business and getting to decide kind of those factors, that helps a lot with basically determining like, oh, hey, like, you know, it's like, I would love to be able to provide like this creative outlet for myself, but also make it so that I can give my couples like this full experience into things where it's like, I would, you know, where it's like, you know, being myself an engaged person, it's like, this is the stuff I want to feel. I want to help like other people feel this way too.
Yeah. And you're kind of in a unique situation because Ben is actually filming you and Ashley's wedding this summer, correct?
Yeah, in September. So yeah.
So this fall.
Close, yeah.
So yeah, you definitely get kind of an inside look at like how Ben does things. And I know that
That's right.
exactly what you were saying. He's very good about, you know, building those relationships and making it feel important rather than just, you know, another vendor you're hiring. But I thought that'd be good for the listeners or viewers, however they consume the podcast, to know that
we're trying to hide it. Now you pulled back the curtain.
Yeah, we're just right out there. Eric and Ashley went with Graphic Formation Films and not Reed Shepherd Films.
Yeah. But yeah, you also get that unique opportunity to like plan your wedding. So now you get to kind of see what it's like from their perspective, like your client's perspective.
Right. Oh yeah, that's totally. And that was a thing too, where it was when we got our engagement photos done this last July. And it was definitely a super refreshing experience for both Ashley and I. Like Ashley doesn't do all of the stuff full time, but she does help me quite a bit with a lot of the actual like sides of the business. So seeing for both of us, like seeing the actual other side of the lens really gave us a really fresh version of like, this is how it really feels to like be on that side. And instead of it being like a thing where it's like, we know how uncomfortable it can be, it's like we really dove into like, if we literally just like, you basically like, you don't get any of that uncomfortable feeling like after the first 5 minutes. Like there's always the jitters of like the anticipation is the worst part, but like when you really click with who you like chose and like you're like really assured like with who it is, it's super rewarding. Not even just like getting the actual like photos back or like, you know, or whatever medium that you are or whatever, but like the actual like the experience itself. Cause like that for us was like a super huge indicator of like, okay, like this is where like good trigger points of emotion are for people to like actually like for myself to be like, oh, okay, here's like how I can actually like make them feel like really great in these moments and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like it's a thing where I'm sure you guys hear it all the time, but like where people say all the time, they're like, oh, we're not like camera people, or we're really camera shy or anything like that. And then it's like, you just make us look good. And a thing that like I find it anymore where it's like everyone is self-conscious to like certain degrees, but having it be where it's like a thing I always tell everybody the second they tell me that is that I like, you make you look good. We're just here to help other people see it and to capture you in the most genuine way possible, but in the most flattering like way for you. So like getting them actually doing the stuff that they genuinely enjoy and like who they actually are, instead of just being like if they like boating and fishing, like, okay, let's go do stuff that involves that, instead of just being like, you like boating and fishing, that's cool, but there's this really pretty park that has like great trees, like, you know, instead of doing that kind of stuff. So it's really about like getting to know the people, so that you can actually like make a genuine connection and make those moments and like fill in those moments with stuff. Which is where it's like a thing too, where I think is a thing where it's like with, and Reed, I apologize, I don't know if like your business offers this, but where it was, I saw where it was with like Ben's, where it was like you can add on like video for like an engagement video kind of thing. That lends itself like to that kind of stuff. So where it was, when you guys talked about on your last podcast about making it so like, because I used to do video before I ever shot photo. So where it's, I totally like get, and where you say like it's a full encompassing of the moment, and like our brain fills in the gaps between photos and stuff. So it's really good to have those kind of things to fill in the gaps and that kind of thing. And I could do, I think myself included, I think every other vendor can do a good job about like making sure that like videographers are seen as a more necessary part of a wedding day, and not just like it's like, oh yeah, this is a luxury thing. It's like, no, you really want, you know, like this kind of stuff to actually like decades later when, you know, say, you know, God forbid if like, you know, family members pass or whatever else, it's like you want those lasting memories, you know, to hold on to those kind of moments and those kind of things for those people.
I really like what you said though about the whole making it about like the whole thing about the pose, like, oh, this park's really pretty, and instead of going boating. I totally get that. I feel like I have a love-hate relationship with sunset portraits. Like, sometimes I do these sunsets and I'm like, I mean, is this like the couple though? Like, are they this lovey-dovey all the time? So sometimes if I feel like the couple's not like all lovey-dovey, maybe I'll just have them kind of goof around. Like, they just run and swing their arms rather than all like cuddly and kissy. If that makes kissy a word, kissy.
Yeah, kissy. Yeah, go ahead and kissy.
But yeah, like, so sometimes couples aren't like all over each other like other couples.
Right.
So yeah, I really like that, and I think that's cool. Rather than all these like staged poses that isn't really telling the couple's story.
Yeah, it's so important to really capture the personality of your couple, and you know, just kind of bring that to life, whether that's with photos or with video. You know, you want them to be happy with what they're getting. You don't want them to look at those photos or those videos and be like, yeah, I mean, that looks really cool. That's very like cinematically pleasing or very photogenic. I don't, what would be the word for cinematic, like on the photo side?
I mean, I feel like cinema was like, it's based on like moving pictures. So like, it's still like, you're still talking about composition. So I feel like cinematic is still, you know, the same is right. I feel like that's still right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So, you know, it's cool. Like, it's cool if it's super cinematic and it looks really awesome, but you want to make sure your couple's going to look at those down the road and be like, oh wait, that is absolutely 100% us. And you want them to remember like a good experience with their photographer and their videographer. And the way you're going to do that is by, you know, capturing their personality. So yeah, that was awesome what you said, Eric.
So cool. What, let's see, next question. What do we have on here? How do you get into a creative mindset? So like, So we can just start with maybe when you're at a wedding. What do you feel like gets you into that creative flow?
Yeah. So like, so if Ashley is there with me during the day, so say they want 2 photographers and that's what we do. So we always like have conversations beforehand about like who the couple are and what we've done with them previously and what we talked about. And then, I'm a super, like, I'm an introverted extrovert. So where it's like when I actually get to the wedding and I'm like super like excited about like the day, I'm very at the forefront of things. But when it like before like it gets there, like on the drive, I'm driving there like super quiet, like just like completely in my own head, just like basically like storing all of my mental energy and like creativity. Cause like even at the day when it's like a super awesome like wedding, I'm just like, I'm burnt. Like I expelled literally everything that I am and that I have. So it's just like, even if it's like you're just like running on adrenaline, like driving home, just like, oh yeah, that was so good, and I like we nailed this one part and like that, and like this like super awesome interaction, that kind of stuff. But in terms of like where it's like I'm storing that energy to then where it's a thing that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, that's super important for vendors especially, is every single person that is around the bride and groom is going to take the cue off of how you interact with them when you first show up for the whole rest of the day. They're like, okay, that's their relationship. So if you just show up and you're like that low key, like super, like just in your head, like on the way drive there, and you like take that in to when you're actually there at the wedding, they're going to think you're like this standoffish kind of like, you know, very quiet person, and they need to take charge, where it's like when you show up, you want to feel like they can trust you to like take charge. Exactly. And to like, you know, you're the professional, you're supposed to, you know, you're the professional, that kind of thing. So where, you know, like being like, hey, how's it going? How are you? Like, what have you been up to? It's, you know, it's like, it's only been like, you know, maybe even like a couple days or like weeks since we talked. Like, what's new? Or like, how's your morning been going? Like that kind of stuff. As soon as like you are super buddy with them, like everybody else is like, oh my gosh, they're just like one of our friends. Like, no big deal.
Exactly.
Like they're not even gonna like bat an eye at it. But if you like are like combative or just like, oh, my drive really like sucked, like getting here, and like this thing happened this morning and I couldn't believe it, and yada yada, like come on, like that, you know. Or it's just like, you know, it's, you know, it's like that double-edged sword kind of thing, where it's like they are, you know, like you do want to approach it as like you are their friend and that kind of stuff, but you need to give people that impression when you get there, kind of thing. And it's definitely not like I'm at like 97 some weddings now or something. Ooh, and like that's still like not like an easy thing to do, because that's just not my personality, is to just be like super upfront with people who I've never met in my life besides the bride or the groom, you know.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. And so where it's just, you know, it's like you have to just like literally just be like, I'm gonna do this, like this is gonna be great. Because if you mentally are in the mindset of this is going to suck, it's going to suck no matter what you do. So it's that just like putting that effort into like actually like you have to really care, and your bar has to be high for you to do that kind of stuff. And that kind of goes in like hand in hand with like making sure like as the couple too, like doing your due diligence and making sure like you vibe with that. Because not everyone is there, you know, on like that level of where they want to be, or like making sure other vendors are there too. Because if everybody's level is here and then their level is down, for those listening just audio, I'm raising my hand up very high. If your bar is very high and one vendor's bar is very high and others is very low, the other people are going to drag the one that's very high down. And you don't want that, you know. You want everyone to kind of be on the same page. So it's just making sure that everybody gels well and that kind of thing. And they all have, you know, it's like I want to treat everyone's wedding like it's my like wedding, not in terms of like I do what I want, but it's like that it's very important. It's only going to happen once, and I want this to be the best for them.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I kind of have a follow-up question on that. Do you have any like pre-wedding rituals? Like, you know, how some football players have their songs they listen to or whatever. Do you have any ritual before you go into a wedding?
Oh,
He's out in his car listening to Spice Girls or something.
So tell me what your mom, what your brother did. No, I honestly, it's just like either I listen to podcasts or music. A lot of times it's music to like hype me up kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just like music a lot, you know, to kind of get like in that kind of like that creative like mindset of like what we want to accomplish for the day and that kind of thing. And it's just like anything that where it was a lot of stuff you guys talked about on your last like podcast with stuff is where it was just, you know, like the music that kind of like gets you into like the creative flow kind of deal of things.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
I like what you said earlier about going there and kind of acting more like, the way I took it is like acting more like you're excited to be there.
Right.
And it's not like you're there for the paycheck. You're there because you love what you're doing, and you're there to, you're excited to be a part of their wedding. And I think that helps couples feel way more relieved knowing like they're just as excited about this as we are. So that's good.
Yeah. And I think too, the thing for like people not to misconstrue with that too, is where it's like not to, it shouldn't be an act either. You should genuinely care. Cause if you are making it an act and like super fake, people will tell, and they'll take that cue off you too. They're just like, oh, okay. Like they don't actually care.
Yeah. And it can
about,
be exhausting if you're always acting all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You should
like,
yeah. Anybody who is in this profession who doesn't want to be doing weddings shouldn't be doing it. You should really be doing this because you love weddings and you love interacting with the couples. And kind of the second that kind of stuff goes away is probably when you should think about quitting. Like this really isn't the profession for people who are just kind of in it for the money. But
I think it's also important to note that like your interaction with the couple is really important, but also like your interaction with the other vendors, because like the couple is gonna see how you interact with, like if you're just kind of pushing over all the other vendors, they're gonna see that and see it's not a good look.
That actually brings up a perfect question that someone commented on our Facebook. Max Johnson, who's been mentioned on this podcast quite a bit. He asked, how do you guys deal, like with Ben was talking about different vendors, how do you guys deal with a photographer or videographer that you might not necessarily click with? That doesn't happen too often, at least not for me, but I have had an experience with that. So
it was me. It was with me. So.
Yeah. I hate working with Ben.
Going to fly the drone when he needed you for a speech.
Yeah, let's get back into that.
Sorry for the throwback. I apologize. Sorry.
So how do you go about dealing with that?
I think that it goes into like it's the double. It comes from both your side and from the couple's side too. Is like making sure that like the vendors follow as a couple your personality and like what you want and like with the actual work besides just the work itself too. And then it's also up to the vendors themselves to kind of not have an ego about the thing, about like the actual day itself, because you know, where it's really about them. And if they really, really wanted to, like, not saying that that's the ideal for them, they could replace you with someone else if you're going to be a jerk. Mm-hmm. So it's really about, you know, like making sure the priorities are in the right area. And it's really about the couple and about, you know, like actually giving them the actual like best day that you could. So again, like making sure the bar is there. Like you want to make sure that the bar is there for everyone. But again, if there are issues, like making sure that it isn't in front of other people too, like being on this, like you can be on the sideline and have a disagreement and come to like a proper like actual conclusion with that and a solution with that. But don't go out of your way to make an issue about something that doesn't need to be an issue, kind of thing. And a lot of that leads to as well, it's like if you have open communication about like, okay, like here's where we'll be for the videographers have a very like it needs to be a very like kind of static layout when it comes to the ceremony. Like, okay, we need this angle and we need this angle, and photographers really don't have a static thing. So it's about like whenever it's like my kind of stuff, I always go like, okay, where do you need to be? And then I will adjust like what we need to do. Like we both need a lot of like the same kind of shots, but that doesn't mean I don't have to be in your way to get them. And I don't have to be in front of all your angles. Like, so it's just that kind of like an open communication, especially on the day of, and like knowing actually like, again, like everyone else is going to take their cues off of how you interact with people as well. And so, yeah, I think it all just boils down to, honestly, just, you gotta want to do it. You gotta want to, like, make sure that it isn't about you. Like, it's like, is video and photo important? Absolutely. Is it more important than like, where it's like, is your argument more important than like covering this certain part of their day? No, not really. Because as soon as that day is over, like you're probably going to forget about that argument, but they're not going to. They're going to remember that forever. So it's like, is that really like, is that really the soapbox you want to stand on, in that moment? Exactly. It's a lot about perspective and open communication.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I've ever had that kind of instance happening either. That would be very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a perfect answer for that, is just communicate. Not only like, so if you're someone that's getting into photography or videography and want to get into weddings, take exactly what Eric said and just live by that. Communicate, not only with the couple, but ask about the other vendors, and just do what you can to be 100% on the same page. And then 99% of the time you're going to avoid issues.
And by doing that too, you save yourself a lot too, because when you are communicating more than you even need to, people come to you as like, oh, this is the person and this is the professional in those instances. And that's how you want people to see you, because that's not where you're going to get all of your inquiries from, is from like guests at past weddings, but you might get some, and you never know when they're going to happen. So you always kind of want to be on the top there when it comes to of like actually making sure that you are doing that and giving like 110% in those instances, and making sure that you are openly communicating with not only like other vendors, but like, it could be even wedding party, where it's like, okay, you get one set done. You can then approach like, the bridesmaids, be like, okay, so like, it's really warm outside, so we don't want you to be out there a super long time. We know that you're getting like, you're pulling the bouquets out of the vases and that kind of stuff, and getting them dried off. So what we'll do is we'll do these sets first, and we'll get these done. And then we'll do the group and then get everybody in so that everybody can like come back inside and cool down. And then we'll bring everybody else back out. And so it's making sure that not only the bride and groom know that, but other people know too, so that they can help you. Even if it's not their like responsibility to do those things, it's just like, it saves yourself the frustration of like, if you're dealing with 20 wedding party members, like it doesn't hurt anything to just verbalize those things out loud, because then they know to come to you. And that's what you want. You don't want them to be like, well, you don't know what's going on, so let's like, we probably don't need to be anywhere, so let's just go. Like you want them to be there with that kind of stuff to help you. So even if it's not like doing things for you, it's just literally knowing what's going on, that helps you.
Yeah. I like that. Let's cut right here and have a break from our sponsor. Go ahead, Eric. I think we talked about creative juices flowing.
Can we talk about how funny of a word that is? Like
creative
juices. Like, what do you think that looks like?
You're just like,
do you really want to know? Or
like, I think of like rainbow, like colors of like paint just like dripping down. I don't know.
I think
Every time I hear that,
the meme where it's like the brains, where they're like, it's like a stupid quote or something. And then it gets like more unintelligent as you go down. And it's just like the brains and like atoms exploding from the brain. That's what I think of when it's like, I'm at full
that's
capacity.
Actually perfect.
Yeah, no. Yeah, sorry. I was just curious what you guys thought creative juices look like.
I'm just imagining sitting at a computer and you just have like juice just like squeezing out of you as you're like hard at work. You're like, and juice is just like seeping out
It's
of
like
you.
a cup,
gives me
just
a-
like to the ear. Just like that, and then just set the cup down.
That gives me a good idea for a TikTok. So whenever we wrap this up,
Oh shoot! Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
you're just gonna have somebody pour juice.
Orange
over you.
juice, just like out of the ear. Just
You just sit there, you're working, and just like juice just falls all over you. And that's my creative juice.
All right, so here we go.
Yeah, back
I
on
assume
task.
we're back. Are we back or are we cutting here?
Well, I hope that creative juice part's in the podcast.
All right, sounds good. All right, so
oh no.
tell me this. Okay, so you have I'm sure you have a standard workflow, like for most weddings and stuff. Or like when you're editing, you have like a workflow for how you do things or how you edit a photo. What ways have you been creative recently where you've tried something new?
A thing that as soon as all of the pandemic and the quarantine stuff happened, not to carbon date the podcast for future people, but I saw a lot about people starting to use like Gifs. Or GIFs, I don't know. I really don't know how it's pronounced.
I think I said GIFs.
I think it's GIF, but it should be GIF, but whatever.
The where you basically take a bunch of images and you basically animate it in a video loop kind of format. I involve that into like some social media stuff and into website stuff to kind of basically provide like a different perspective kind of thing. Basically kind of giving a bridge between the video and the photo world a little bit, but it's like a very, very limited version of the video stuff. It's not video in its actual form. It's basically like a little those loops, but basically giving them a more intimate version, like you had mentioned previously, where it's like video is the full scope of what like those like actual moments are. So giving like a photo is a snapshot, and yes, you can like Photoshop a photo and that kind of thing, but the whole goal of wedding photographers and all of that is to provide an actual like a documentary style format in photo. So capturing real moments and genuine moments with sometimes posing, but to provide an actual overall visual narrative and scope of the day. And so couples should feel like they can start the gallery, and when they end the gallery, they actually like feel like they experience the full day in its entirety via like that kind of format. But GIFs are to like give more breadth into like singular moments and that kind of stuff. So in providing like those types of things is like new stuff I've been trying to add in. And then other just general like Lightroom like tips and hacks and that kind of stuff. And people are interested in learning about those, they can just message me directly, because if I try to explain chromatic aberrations to general people, they'll be like, what is that? I don't understand. And I'd be like, the green line in like trees sometimes and like, the sky. And they're like, no, that's really weird. What are you talking about? And I'd be like, never mind. Don't worry about that. It's okay. Like, I'll just take care of that. Don't worry about it.
Trying to imagine what a GIF of like a first look would look like. You'd be like, all right, start walking. And you're just like for like 3 minutes straight.
Yeah. Well, and like that's what's interesting about where it was. I don't know. I do a bad job of like keeping up with like the newest like cameras all the time, just because I shoot on 2 Sony A7 IIIs, and after like that was like has long battery life, has a dual card slots, you know, and it's like has full frame sensor. It's like, okay, good. I have those are all the tick marks I need for stuff. But like for like a GIF, you're taking between like 8 to 14 images and stitching them together. But really what it looks like is I kind of give them like a prompting or like some kind of action to do. And then you just hear, and it's 30 photos, you know, over like, you know, a second like happening. So it's just like, you know, like, or like a machine gun firing off. And then it's just like, okay, now I need to let my camera think about that for a second while it processes the 30 images I just took in one breath there. But if like, you know, camera advances go farther and farther, I'm just imagining like doing like an actual full first look and you're just like, it's 240 photos and you're just like, okay, it's time to start stitching this all together and figuring this out, you know,
I mean, like
with that kind of stuff. But
yeah, like to really get into it, like you said, 30 photos a second or something, that's similar to like frame rate. I mean, I think that is frame rates on like the video side. So
yeah,
it's just a cool way to take, you know, photos and kind of add a little bit of movement to them. I don't even know how to go about making a GIF or a GIF or however you would do it, but
I can definitely show you anytime.
For sure. We'll talk after this.
Yeah, it's good.
No, I think that's cool. It's almost like video and photo are coming together, and I'm trying to imagine eventually you're going to get these companies that are either they say they're offering video or they say they're offering photo, and essentially they'll get you both. And like for like photos, you get like the stills from the video because it'd be just like taking a GIF, like you're taking if they're taking 24 photos in a second, then you'd get just as high a quality photo as if you had a photographer. But I feel like that'll years down the road still.
And it's still, there's also like a lot of technical stipulations to it too. Like you need a certain focal length because if you're using a focal length that's too tight because there's movement and the program's basically like stitching everything together, you can warp the images really badly. So you have to use a certain type of lens and in like a certain type of environment, and you actually like you personally can't move. Like you need to stay there where you are, and the subjects need to move, because as soon as you actually start moving your feet or anything like that, or like the zoom, you're going to mess it all up. So there's like a lot of weird like kind of stipulations in terms of that stuff. But with you saying about with like merging like photo and video stuff, the guy who taught me, and his name, his like Instagram handle and what he uses on his website is called Henry's Diary. And so he's out of the Pacific Northwest, and he actually like, so he is like teaching people how to make these GIFs, but then he also provides his clients with like basically GIF videos. So like where you're talking about doing that first look and kind of things, like I don't know his like behind the scenes on it kind of stuff, but I imagine it would have to be kind of a more like intentional, like, okay, here's where you are going to like read your vows and move like your thumb back and forth as you're like reading your like your vow kind of thing. And it's like, okay, here's these shots of you doing that kind of thing. And then he stitches all of those GIFs together in like an actual like video kind of thing. So it's like just from me like editing like one GIF and then it's like an actual like loop. It takes me sometimes like a half hour.
Wow.
And that's if everything goes correctly and I did everything right beforehand too. So I'm just trying to imagine like, you know, that kind of thing. Like knowing when I was even doing like video stuff when I very first started, nothing to the level of you guys, but where it was like, it was still taking me like 60, 70 hours after I shot the wedding to actually in the actual video edits, that kind of stuff. And I wasn't even doing it at the quality of you guys doing. So I'm like myself imagining like an actual, that kind of video format, but in a GIF format makes my head hurt.
Yeah, that would take a lot of processing power.
Yeah,
I'll tell you
it
what.
would. Oh yeah, it would.
Goodness.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Well, cool. So GIFs is something that you learned, or something that you've been doing recently. What would you say is probably the most recent thing that you've learned, even if it's maybe not something someone understands?
It's definitely not on the actual like technical side of things. It's with my and everyone's gear was completely different just because 2020 was incredibly like difficult on everyone, no matter what their business was or anything like that, or their livelihood. But because my year was so backlogged, I had basically 12 months slammed into like a 5-month period of time for myself.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so like that was really hard, like trying to learn about where it was just like balancing work-life balance, but like not giving on like the actual, like, because when someone signs a contract with you, and if you are a professional doing this kind of stuff, you should be having people sign contracts. That's a sidebar right there. Like, always do contracts. But a thing that was very important that I learned was to actually schedule days off, where it's like, sure, I'd answer emails and that kind of stuff too, but like, so that I could basically build back up my energy so that I could give more on the days where I was working back to my couples and my work and my clients, and give them like what I promised or better. With those kind of things, it's totally like a thing, especially when you're like a sole proprietor or an entrepreneur or any of that kind of stuff. There is this inclination that you feel afraid sometimes to share when you're not working, because then you feel like people are going to be like, oh, he said he was going to do, or like he or she said they were going to do this. They're not doing this like all the time. Like, you know, like, what are they doing? You know, like, I thought they were going to do this, and like, I'm being let down. That's the voice we have in our head. But what we get so hyper focused on that, but we don't realize those people are also working full-time jobs, and like, they also have days off, and they know how important those days off. So, but we don't give because we are our own boss and we're wearing all these different hats, we don't give ourselves the benefit of the doubt for those kind of things, like that people won't trust us with like that kind of, like, you know, hearing that information, when really it's just like, yeah, they understand and they definitely know. But yeah, I've definitely learned to give myself days off from doing like major portions of like post-production work and that kind of stuff, or even just major projects or anything like that, so that I can come at it even harder and give more to people. Because I feel like, especially after those like a day or 2 days off, I found that it's like, okay, I'm way more productive with actually giving back to people. So that's definitely something that I've been trying to implement more, is making sure that I actually, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but schedule a day off so that I could give more back when I actually am working.
Yeah.
And I think that's something people don't realize, like you were saying, is how important it is to, you know, make time for yourself too. Because when you own your own business or whatever you're doing, I know probably all three of us struggle with this. Like, if we get a email or an inquiry, like any time of day, like we want to answer that and we want to respond to it or whatever. It is just so important to take those breaks and have some you time, whether you time is like with your girlfriend, with your fiance, with your wife, whatever. But even for me, so like when I finish like a highlight film, I need like at least 2 days before I get into like another film, just because I like need to reset creatively. So I liked what you were saying about how like you need that time off sometimes to be able to give 110% to your couples and your clients and stuff. But something I really related to there.
That's cool. I like that. Do you feel like, okay, are you creative in more than one area? And like, what are the different areas, do you feel like?
So before I started doing photo stuff, I was actually like in video, and I was like trying to specialize in experimental filmmaking techniques, but like very older style, like 50s style experimental film. But even before that, I was actually going to be a vocal performance major. So I still like to sing occasionally. It's just mainly in the car. and in the shower and stuff. But that's where I, it was like a lot of formative groups in high school and then college. And then even like, where it was like, I was in like vocal jazz groups where it's like 8-part harmony, but like each person has like their own individual part. And it's all like, if you're musically inclined, I don't know, but where it was just like you're half steps apart from like 3 other people. So it's like, you mess up like even like a tiny, like little bit like sharp or flat or anything like that. Like you are messing up the whole chord. And like, and you can just like derail everything. So like that was some easily like the hardest vocal stuff I've ever done. But from there, it was then into video stuff. Like I started doing like newscast stuff. I worked with what is a local station here. It's KCRG. It's like a ABC affiliate of doing like live production stuff. So I was an audio operator with our live truck. And that was some of probably the hardest physical work I've done, because it was carrying these big box, like you see on ESPN, those big box zoom camera lenses and that kind of stuff. It's like the lens is its own case, and it's like an 80-pound case. And then you have the tripod, and the act is like its own thing because it doesn't fit in the box. And then you have another box that's holding the actual body and sensor of the camera, and that's another 60 pounds. So it's like, okay, here I am carrying both of these 2 suitcases. And to give people size reference, I'm 5'5", and like barely like over 120 pounds. So I'm carrying over my body weight, and they're like, here you go, Eric. Like, and I'm like, okay. Like I'm like
open
a
the
kid.
case and you get in it.
Yeah. I'm like a kindergartner off to school, like for the first time, they don't like make backpacks that small, and it's like this huge honking thing. And I'm just like, it's like, it just looked weird, and carrying like these big, like 500-foot triax cables, which like they're called triax because they have intercom, the audio, like actual cables inside, and the video cables inside them. And like each one is 500 foot long, but they're like 50 pounds a piece. So like doing like those, like lugging those around that was something else. That was really fun. The crews are always super awesome, and you're going to new places all the time. But then it was that onto like music photography, like doing concerts. Those are super fun. I always love those. Like getting to shoot like Mumford and Sons and Lights, The Wonder Years, Motion City Soundtrack, Weezer,
Ooh, that would be
Wilco,
sweet.
That's cool.
that kind of stuff. There's not a lot to describe that kind of thing. It feels like a different world now. Like I'm really curious after all of this stuff to kind of see what happens to that kind of whole sphere of like events and that kind of stuff going forward. But the second I started shooting weddings, I was like, wow, I really, really don't want to do anything else. Like I never, like when I was in college doing new stuff, I was like, I would never do weddings. That's way too much pressure. Like what insane person would want to do this for a living? That sounds like so much stress. That is crazy. And then 2 years later, I'm like, I don't want to do anything else. This is the best.
I feel the same way. I didn't think I'd enjoy weddings as much, and when I did my first one, I was like, wow, this is a lot of fun.
In its own really weird kind of sense, like I view concerts and weddings in a similar fashion in the terms of they are like in the event sphere of like actual like of production, and that like the same with like with the concert may be like, oh, like they might do like the same set they've done in another place, but they haven't done it this place on this day, and they'll never do that again. Whereas like a wedding in that kind of vein is the same way, where it's like these people will never be here doing that same thing again, ever again in the history of ever. But yet decades from now, family members are going to look back at those images or those like those, those videos and be like, oh yeah, like this is where this happened and this, and like, these people interacted together and that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of making sure that it's like, it's something about the like creatively, like where it's like it hits like that creative itch of like the exclusivity of it is like super extreme, to where it's just like, oh man, like, it's like the adrenaline hits in those kind of moments where it's just like, this is literally someone's family history. And I'm also like a low-key, like a big history buff when it comes to that kind of stuff. So like anything with that where it's just like in terms of documentation and that kind of vibe with that stuff is just super incredibly just like creatively fulfilling when it comes into that.
Yeah,
I like that.
When you
go
shot,
ahead, Reed.
Sorry, it's not off topic, but kind of when you did Mumford Sons, where was that?
That was it. They did their Gentlemen of the Road tour in Waverly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was at that concert. I grew up in Waverly.
Yeah. That was funny is where a funny anecdote where it was how I even got coverage to actually shoot there is where I was shooting with KCRG the day before doing like, we did like our towns, which is basically like focusing on different towns in the viewing area and that kind of thing. And then on Friday doing like a live event, like kind of like broadcast there at like the 5, 6, and then 10 o'clock news slots. They gave us event bracelets for the actual concert itself because it was happening that weekend. So we're there that Friday. And I'm looking at the bracelet and I was like, this is an all weekend media pass. So that gets me like anywhere. And Mumford & Sons is playing tomorrow because we were there on Friday. I'm like, I am coming back and doing that then. But like when I came back, they were like, oh, like it was just really weird. Like, I didn't know where to go in because it was just, there was a lot of miscommunication with parking and that kind of stuff. These security guards told me to basically come in this way because they saw my, like the media like badge and like actual like festival bracelet they gave you. So I ended up backstage with all of the tour buses is where they brought me in. And the second I walked in and I saw people coming out of these tour vans, I was like, those look like part of the performers or their crew. I'm in the wrong place. I'm going to get kicked out and they're not going to let me back in here. So I pulled out my phone and started looking like I was super busy talking to somebody about something, so that no one would bother me. Like they just knew that like I was doing something. So I'd just be like, oh yeah, like no, we need to do this here on this day and that's not when this needs to come out. We need to do that. And I just like quickly briskly like walked back into like the actual grounds of the festival area. But
tip, I'm gonna keep them remember
that.
Tip.
Yeah, it's just like as soon as it was pretty much hello, no, don't do that. Don't do that.
No, I don't need that right now.
Yeah.
I don't have time for this.
Yeah. I am very important. Do you understand? I am very important. No.
I'm gonna fire you.
You're fired. We're done.
Jensen, on Monday we're gonna have a very important talk about what is not appropriate at festivals. Okay. It was that was something else, but it was that was a funny inkling where it was like hearing back one of the things about that festival though, with you saying you were there. They were wanting 30,000 people to be there, but the population of Waverly itself is 10,000 people. It's like, how many people do you expect to come to Waverly, Iowa from out of the place? Do you expect the population of the whole city to be like tripled? Like, what are you talking about? But I mean, 10,000 people still looked incredible there. Like that was so good. But where it was, but like with that pass got me into the first 3 songs of the set, which is standard for concert photography. It gets you into like the pit in between where the very actually like front row of people are and the actual edge of the stage. So you're in that gap there. So getting like to just take as much footage or photos as you want of the first 3 songs of their set, and then they move you out. And then sometimes they tell you can't take any more, or sometimes you just have to find your way in the crowd, find a spot to kind of go. And when it's that big, it's pretty impossible to find a spot.
Yeah, that's cool. That's one of our paths ever crossed.
You're in that spot with
photos.
the pit, but you don't even have your photo. You don't even have your camera. Your camera's just
He
like...
took a picture of the fans, and I was in the crowd. Funny story.
I'm sure.
I had to leave early because I worked for Jimmy John's. And so I like wore my Jimmy John's uniform to the concert because I had to go like deliver, because it was like, there's a ton of people coming into town. So I like wore my Jimmy John's outfit to the concert and then like had to bail with like 3 songs left or something like that. So if you got a shot of a Jimmy John's employee, that was me.
I'm the one who called the Jimmy John's. Actually, you just like you went there and then like came back to the grounds.
Yeah,
it's like, here you go, here's a sandwich.
That's funny.
That's funny.
Okay, I think we got one more question for you, and then we'll end with what inspired us.
Do you want to ask one of ours, or I know Kayla asked a question.
Oh, we can ask that one too.
mean,
Yeah, that's what. Go ahead.
What? Okay. So we got another question on our Facebook post. She asked, what is your advice for couples comparing and contrasting pricing and different benefits / packages for any photo and video for their video or for their wedding? Do you have any tips on what specifically to look for when doing the comparison? Like when you're shopping around, do you have any tips?
I would definitely say it's stuff that you guys have touched on before, where it's like being cheaper isn't, you get what you pay for basically with stuff. But also too, where it's like, just because someone is pricing this much, like over this one or whatever, doesn't necessarily mean they're worth more. It's up to you as the vendor to be honest, with their value, but also up to you to kind of determine, kind of what you value and that kind of thing. With their actual products and all of that stuff. I would definitely look into reviews, are always super important. That's the thing I tell everyone, is to make sure. And that's when a lot of what I do with my business too is like especially if couples are like, say it's a couple who normalizes that a videographer is very important, which I think most should, is that those are like the venue, videographer, photographer are usually the three things that they pick first. And that happens a lot. So a lot of what I do, and I tell all my couples this, is that, because this is my full-time thing, I will help you find other vendors and vet, those things for them. But a thing I tell everyone is make sure you look at reviews, make sure that you actually, like, personality wise, like, look at that kind of stuff. Make sure that you actually don't just look at the images or the videos and be like, okay, I'm done. Like, where do we put the money down? Like, make sure that you actually, like, look into what they do and their personalities. Look at their social media as well. If, like, that's like whatever is basically like you think represents you, look there for those things. Don't make it just you don't want to make it just an exchange of money for like a service thing. This is your wedding day. You're only going to do it once. So you need to make sure that they value the same things you do.
I like that.
So in terms of in terms of like, with that kind of stuff too, a thing that, we hear like a lot of the same questions all the time, because this is our job. And I think it's like, for anyone who's outside of the industry would then come in and they'd be like, I hear these questions all the time. It's so annoying. To me, I've long since gotten past that mindset, because it's up to us to educate people, because this is our profession is super not normal. It's really strange, because a question I'll get, especially from older generations, because this job, when I graduated high school in 2009, this was not an active profession, like in terms of like traveling around a lot. It was a localized thing with these kind of professionals, or it'd be like, oh, like the town's, photo studio takes care of, these like sessions and that kind of stuff. That is not a thing necessarily anymore. People can search vendors outside of their area to come in, and they could be just as much or less expensive, but give a better quality depending on what you're looking at and who you're looking for. And it could be more than that too. But again, it's what you value. But it's our job to educate people with those kind of questions, that kind of stuff. A thing that I would tell couples is look at what their pricing is for any vendor. Don't haggle with vendors, just because there's a lot of over and under costs that come with people adding pricing, because this is like our livelihoods. There's under the line costs to everything. It's like, I gotta, pay for insurance and bills and, that kind of stuff, just like everybody else does. But, and that is factored into the pricing, like as it honestly should be. And that should be for anyone. Like if you're hiring someone to do your flooring at your house and they're an independent contractor, with that kind of thing, I would expect that, their pricing is what it is because of, they want a livable wage with things. Not that that's the most important thing, but it's just something to determine. So, you wouldn't, expect someone to come into your job where you're on a salaried position and be like, so I see you do this one thing for someone, but you do the same work for this other price that I think is better.
Yeah.
And they don't mean it as an insult, but, it's just kind of like, it's really easy to lose the perspective of on that when there's, in the wedding industry, there's so many blog posts or, informative packets and that kind of stuff. And not all of them are wrong. Not all of them are right, but there's a lot of noise. And so it's our job to really educate and help people kind of understand kind of the actual levels and that kind of stuff too. And when people do ask like, oh, do you offer like, a discount for not having this thing in here, even though it was an included part of this package, it's like, even if it's like, I really don't like that you haggled there. It's like, I'm not going to be like, I don't want to work with you now. It's like, well, we don't do this because like, and here's these reasons why, and just like list it in like an actual informative way. Cause that's just honestly part of the territory with stuff. And I feel like if photographers, videographers, DJs, venues, florists, all of them, wedding planners, with any of that stuff, normalize that kind of thing, they'll realize that it's like, okay, they're really just wanting to know. Like they just don't know. And that's okay. Like that's everyone starts at square one. We all started too. We're just like, what camera and lens do I use for this stuff? So, and that's a normal question. So I really think, look at what your personality is, talk with your partner about what you're comfortable with, talk about soft budgets on things, talk about what your hard budget is. Like, okay, if they say this number, would we wiggle? And if so, why? And like, would we wiggle on this other vendor then if we did that? And that's totally like an open conversation you want to have with your significant other. I know where it was a couple years ago, there was a study put out that couples were putting out like second mortgages or something just for their wedding. Don't do that.
Yeah.
No.
Do not do that. You should not be putting yourself in your place. If that's really the route you want to go with that's very dangerous. I think any professional in the industry would very much steer you away from that.
We had somebody message us recently, and they were wondering about like doing like payment plans like after the wedding, and I just told them like we don't want to be a financial burden to you guys, and I'm sure you can find somebody that isn't going to stress you out financially, and they're still going to give you something you're going to love. And I even was like, we'll help you find something that's not quite as right. So yeah.
And it's finding those things too, where it's like as an actual vendor like that, like that's a really great example of making sure that you can actually feel comfortable with being like, like this probably like isn't the safest fit for you, but it's like, but we would love to help you find someone who is. And that's basically, depending on kind of, and that's going honestly, another reason why I really like Ben and why we chose Ben with that kind of stuff is just basically on that, like that character aspect is that, that's not a typical thing with vendors either. Like not all vendors will be like, oh, well, we can't really work that date. And like, we know that you were really set on us, but like, sorry, like we're already booked
Good
that
luck,
day.
yeah.
It's like, yeah, goodbye. Like, I hope it's awesome. Like, bye, and like, that's
Bye.
it, and then just like slowly closes the door on their face kind of thing, but it's like, okay, well, we know you're really adamant, like that kind of thing. It's like, I've had people approach me in kind of the same way. And I was like, let me help you with this. And I've had other people that knew them from that interaction that then book with me later. So again, the same thing with like interacting with guests to go a little bit full circle with that. is to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward, even if it isn't directly going to benefit you in the short term. It could benefit you in the long term, and even if it doesn't benefit you at all, there's no harm in doing it anyway, because that's just being a good person. So.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, should we?
Yeah, it was a lot of good info.
Yeah, that was. I mean,
people are. If you've made it this far, I hope you had a notebook throughout that whole thing. A lot of good tips and advice, and
they can pause and rewind and.
Yeah, good call. Rewatch it and give us a penny every time you listen.
Yeah, I think we're up to 30 cents on our sponsorship right now.
Let's get that gumball.
And we owe
we'll cut the gumball up. Yeah.
We owe Eric 50% of that. But no, yeah, tons of awesome information and just good overall conversation. So we like to end our podcast. You sound like you've listened to it before, so first of all, thank you.
Yeah.
But we like to end our podcast by talking about something that recently has either inspired us or something we want to do to be better or whatever. But yeah, what is something that has inspired you recently?
So where it was last December, I got the opportunity to do an engagement session out in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. And when I started in 2018, I was just shocked that anybody would even want me to shoot their weddings. So within that too, it was just literally and it wasn't even necessarily when the couple booked, it wasn't a planned thing, out of the gate necessarily. It was just kind of we kind of basically just talked to the options, and it was looking hey, this would be a great fit to do this. And that really brought me to an actual visual realization. I'm standing there on the beach. Ashley was there with me. And it's just this is what real client experience does for you. Giving actually your genuine self into client experience, and truly being yourself and connecting with the right couples, and doing that stuff can do for you. So that's honestly was something that in 2018, I never thought that would happen ever. So I was it was almost laughing at myself in that moment. I was just this is crazy. I was I can't believe I'm here. I think it's a totally a Midwest thing. It's kind of the movie Rudy with that football player. It's the Rudy complex is totally a Midwest thing. We're just we're from the Midwest, we're nobody kind of thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. But it's but we work really hard, and we try to do this thing. So it's just that it kind of felt okay, this is coming to fruition, doing this kind of thing and actually putting this effort in. I'm not, banging my head against a wall thinking oh, I could do this, but that's a stupid dream or whatever. But it really solidified in my mind that it's okay, really giving yourself to actually your couples and being your genuine self is definitely something. So definitely client experience is something that really anymore I see really good client experience with other vendors or anything. That stuff gives me so many ideas and inspiration.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Those photos, by the way, were awesome. I remember I messaged you.
Yeah, those little lanterns.
$5 at Menards.
Yeah, that was that was really
Write that
cool.
down.
Yeah, I was just what? I was these are perfect.
Maybe we should include one of those in our Instagram post.
Yeah, no, I was going to say if you want to send us a few photos.
Okay, I can do
from that. Yeah, that'd be cool.
They're mine, never.
Yeah,
I would never.
We'll tag ourselves Creative Krunch photos, Creative Krunch photography.
Yeah. Creative Krunch Podcast, now owned by Eric W. Osborn.
What about you, Reed?
I was gonna say that too, but speaking of kind of an elopement type of thing, I booked my first destination elopement yesterday. So this fall I get to head out to Yosemite National Park in California, and I am super pumped about that. And yeah,
chef kiss is delicious.
Super pumped to travel out there and kind of try something new. I've never done an elopement before, and the couple is well aware of that. Like we've just been completely in communication, and yeah, they're super pumped to have me, and I'm super pumped to film it with them, for them, not with them. Here, take my camera and film it.
Look at us, we're having a great time.
Yeah. And then actually Ben is planning on coming with me too as my second shooter. So yeah, that's super inspiring. Awesome. It makes me want to keep going and keep doing weddings, and hopefully kind of break into the destination wedding market or the elopement market. And yeah, so that's mine. Your turn, Ben.
Yeah. So
sidewalks, rugs.
Yeah, rugs, light bulbs. No, so it kind of goes back to kind of what Eric, you were saying earlier about like you did wedding photography, and like once you did wedding photography, you were like knowing that you're doing it, and like people are gonna be looking back at like these photos after, like generations will be looking back at these photos and stuff. No, so like I had gotten my tooth pulled, and I was in so much pain, and this dental surgeon, she was like so good at what she was doing. She was just so quick, so knowledgeable, and the moment that like she had like released the pain, like made the pain go away in my face, I just felt so much relief. And in that moment, I could not help but like relate it to like when I deliver a film to a couple, just thinking of like the joy of them like having this film, all these memories, to like her being rewarded with like being able to like relieve my pain. And I was like, it was just really inspiring thinking about how all these different professions probably have their own rewards, and to like her going home and maybe like telling her husband like, oh, I relieved this weirdo's tooth pain. And he was like I was to the point where I was almost in tears because of how much it helped me. And I like in that moment I thought to myself, I was like, I should like show her appreciation for what she did. Like I was like, thank you for doing what you did. That helped me so much.
But your like mouth is numb, so you're just like drooling.
Yeah, instead. It was so puffy, but in that moment I was like, oh my God, you just helped me so much. I really appreciate you. So yeah, that's just awesome. Like coming to that realization that like everyone kind of has their own rewards in their professions. They're just in different ways. So yeah, I thought that was pretty inspiring. Yeah.
We awesome. Should twist that as when you got your tooth pulled, it inspired you.
Yeah.
just to keep it on brand with just your out of the box inspirations. Like
rugs, my neighbor shoveling his sidewalk.
It's just like, dang, that makes me want to go shovel.
Speaking of that, I should probably go shovel my sidewalk.
Yeah. No, yeah, this definitely a good podcast. I think it was pretty successful having our very first guest on. So
yeah, a little longer than usual, but I think if there's anybody that's wanting to get into the wedding photography game, hopefully they stick around and listen to all these tips. So
very knowledgeable.
And totally ask us like questions too. Like we're not sticklers to anyone who just like, if you have questions just about stuff in general, like hit us up. This is what we do. So
Eric, cool. where can our listeners and viewers find you on social
So all of my stuff is tied to, it's Eric W. Osborn. So it's ERIC W and then OSBORN. And then the best place is just that, ericwosborn.com is the website, and all my stuff is tied into there and loops back around.
Yeah, go check him out. He does amazing work, and thanks for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah.
All right, and that's a wrap.
This is the Creative Krunch Podcast.
Yesterday's left turn might be tomorrow's right turn.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Wait. That's a good idea.